Good evening. I'm Diane Lewis, Chief Programming Officer and EVP of the Paley Center for Media, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to a very special evening and a very relevant PaleyImpact program. Tonight, we are hosting a special screening of the moving documentary, A Tree of Life, the Pittsburgh Synagogue Shooting, about the aftermath of one of the deadliest anti-Semitic attacks in American history. This event is part of the Paley Center's ongoing series to examine media's powerful shaping influence and unique ability to raise awareness about the growing crisis of anti-Semitism. This screening and discussion afterwards, and all events in the series, seeks to shine a light on how media in all its forms can educate, inform, and make an impact on this vitally important issue. Our programs, focusing on combating anti-Semitism, are made possible by Shari Redstone and Aryeh and Elena Bourkoff, whom we thank for their most generous support. Additional support has also been provided by the David Berg Foundation. Never before has Paley's mission been more vital, as media has been the undisputed connector to a nation in unprecedented times. Paley is uniquely positioned to meet this moment with impactful conversations led by influential figures such as those we're truly honored to have with us today. Our distinguished guest will discuss how documentaries like A Tree of Life can be used to combat the horrors of anti-Semitism. We are pleased to welcome Director of A Tree of Life, Trish Adlesic, producer of A Tree of Life, Susan Margolin, survivor of the Pittsburgh shooting, Audrey Glickman, and journalist Brady Langman of Esquire. After the screening, you will meet our distinguished moderator, Marcia Rock, who is the professor and the director of news and documentary at the NYU Arthur Carter Journalism Institute. Marcia is also an award-winning documentary filmmaker whose work covers international social and women-focused topics. Marcia is currently working on Family Treasures Lost and Found, a documentary series about a journalist's investigation into her parents' World War II stories of survival.
Welcome, everyone. It's really wonderful to have you here, and it's going to be a really moving experience for all of us to view together and then talk about it afterwards. On October 27th, 2018, a gunman opened fire inside a Pittsburgh synagogue, killing 11 people as they prayed in what would become the deadliest anti-Semitic attack in American history. Just yesterday, Doug Emhoff hosted a White House roundtable about the rise in anti-Semitism. Hate speech, Nazi symbols abound on social media. All of this makes this documentary that we're going to see tonight even more important. And we want to congratulate the team. The premiere was just 2 months ago on HBO Max, so you can tell all your friends to watch it there afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. We'd like to ask everyone to stand, please, and take a moment of silence for those 11 beautiful souls we so wrongfully lost. Richard Gottfried, Rose Mellinger, Jerry Rabinowitz, Joyce Feinberg, Cecil Rosenthal, David Rosenthal, Bernice Simon, Sylvan Simon, Daniel Stein, Melvin Wax, and Irving Younger.
Everyone, so it's a real honor to introduce to you some of the people involved in this production. First is Brady Langman. He's the entertainment editor for Esquire magazine, a Pittsburgh native. And he lived near the Synagogue, and he wrote a very important article about the film. Then we have the producer, Susan Margolin. She's a pioneer of digital film distribution and creator and supporter of independent films with 25 plus years experience. Margolin co-founded independent film distributor New Video Docurama Films in '92 and ran the company until she sold it to Cinedigm in 2012. As co-president of Cinedigm, she distributed critically acclaimed award-winning films, including Destin Daniel Cretton's Short Term 12 and Kirby Dick and Amy Zuring's Academy Award-nominated The Invisible War. In 2016, Margolin launched St. Mark's Productions. She recently produced Nancy Bursky's A Crime on the Bayou and Alexandra Kodina's Paper Children. She also produced for Bursky The Rape of Recky Taylor and executive produced Judith Helfand's Love and Stuff. She is on the board of directors of Chicken and Egg Pictures, Manhattan Neighborhood Network, isn't that great? BAFTA New York and the Documentary Producers Alliance, and she's on the advisory boards of Hamptons DocFest and NYWIFT. Margolin is a member of PGA, BAFTA, and AMPAS. Then we have Trish Adlesic. Trish is an American film producer, best named for her Gasland, Academy Award nominated documentary from 2010, Gasland, as well as its sequel, Gasland Part 2. She has 20 years of experience working in narrative filmmaking and worked on the hit TV show Law and Order SUV. She also directed and produced I Am Evidence, which won the Emmy for Best Documentary. And then we have a survivor of the shooting, Audrey Glickman. And you'll be delighted to know she's the author of Pockets, The Problem with Society in Women's Clothing.
And she might have copies.
She serves as a rabbi's assistant with prior experience in nonprofits, government advertising, and as a legal secretary. She's a native Pittsburgher and blogs for the Times of Israel and has served on many boards and organizations advocating for many causes: equal rights, secure recountable voting, preserving the earth, good government, improving institutions, and understanding and tending to our fellow humans. So I'm going to start with Trish. So how did you decide to make this film?
Well, I too am a native Pittsburgher. There was a lot in
That's
my
right.
bio that wasn't there.
Right,
but,
okay.
Somebody, editor, decided, whatever, it's all good, I'm here. But I actually, growing up, I would hear my father talk about the anti-Semitism at his work, and my husband is Jewish, and his family brought over hundreds of people during the Nazi rise to power, and having, these connections. And I was in Pittsburgh the day of this heinous attack. My father's birthday was October 25th. It was his 91st birthday. I grew up 10 minutes away from the synagogue, and the outrage and heartbreak was overwhelming. It's even hard. I get a little shaky even talking about it because, we never think, but then we see when this type of thing happens. And whether you're Jewish or not, it's a collective outrage. We have outrage for each other. I mean, we're all, largely all at risk for identity-based discrimination and violence. And in my family, I have a homosexual brother. My sister was shot at by the Ku Klux Klan with her Trinidadian boyfriend. So this is very familiar to me. And I have a very dear friend who his parents survived Auschwitz, and we were texting our pain. And I was there, and he sent me a grant immediately. I started filming the next day. I had actually just finished in the spring I Am Evidence, a documentary that I did with Mariska Hargitay, also an HBO film, about the alarming number of untested rape kits in America that led to 48 pieces of legislation to correct the problem. And so I felt in my heart, this is going to be really, really a tough story to tell. And I was very protective of not wanting to approach anyone, but I also wanted to give those that lived it the opportunity to tell it in their own voice, to have agency. I've heard countless complaints from victims of abuse as to how poorly they were treated by the media. And I wanted to be a part of changing that. And so I was actually at the intersection of moving my father to New York from my childhood home. We had lost our mother a few years prior, and we went back on his birthday, actually really have this serious conversation about this, and we looked at each other, and he said, we're going to stay, and you're going to do this. And so I did, and I was there for 3 years, and had connections in the community, and when I left Pittsburgh when I was, to go away to college, so I hadn't lived there full time in a long time, but I was there annually, and so the trauma-informed approach that I had adopted during the making of my last film was the only way I could possibly approach this story. But I also really wanted to take the time that was required and to really have an opportunity. I feel as artisans, when we have it, all of us, whether you're an artist or not, when we learn about these horrific events, and they seem so tragically unfortunate and so regularly in this country, we feel helpless at times. What can we do? How do we respond? Does one get involved in fighting for gun legislation? Does one therapeutically support victims? And so the only way I really knew how to respond was by documenting it. And
can you explain what that trauma-conscious approach
Happy
is?
to,
I think many people would be interested.
Happy to. So the trauma-informed approach is really a therapeutic format. It's based on working closely with the survivors on content. So, for example, with I Am Evidence, I worked with the survivor on the questions that I would be asking other survivors. And when I approached Audrey, we had a connection through a politician that she worked for in Pittsburgh. I asked her about the questions I was going to be asking because I wanted my questions to illuminate and inform and not trigger and shock. And so one of the things we don't want to do is we don't want to re-traumatize anyone in our ability to tell their story. And it is certainly not the conventional approach. I mean, this trauma-informed approach is something that I welcome other journalists and filmmakers to consider and to try to adopt, and I thank Brady for acknowledging this type of work because I had a lot of pushback in taking this approach. I can tell you that most of you have a subscription to a streamer who, when I was first starting to make the film, told me, make it about the shooter. And when the executive said that to me, my heart stopped, and I was aghast. And I said, you would actually want me to spend 4 years of my life focusing on that person? You're not more interested in what those that live through this and what the families have to say about this experience for them and how they've been impacted? No, they didn't want it. So I said, okay, I raised the money on my own and went to people I knew, and I was very selective in who I went to, people that I knew would understand my intention and the approach that I wanted to take. And within the trauma-informed approach, there's also the potential for a cathartic exchange. That is always the hope that by giving one agency to tell their story, they feel heard, but they feel heard in the way that they wanted to be heard, not the way that we interpreted or the way one might, like a talking head or an expert, might decide they would be thinking, but not truly knowing. So that's one way. And another way is to take the time one needs, never to rush. When you're ready, you'll let me know. And if you're not ready, that's okay too. And to cultivate what they wanted to say and how they want to say it. And I also filmed them all in their homes because that's where they felt safest, not in some fancy studio with a green screen. What did they want the world to know about them? And so that was also another way. And additionally, they were included during the editing, they saw iterations of the film, which, my producer here, Susan, who's a remarkable talent herself, would often caution me and say, Trish, what if they don't like it? And what if they want this? And, we can't make it, we have to make it for the general public to engage people in a wide way. And I was like, no, I'm making it for them. And I would say, making it for them. Yeah. If they don't like it, we're doing something wrong. And so that was really, really unconventional, for filmmakers.
So Trish, you brought up so many things that I want to explore, but let's go to Audrey next. So why did you decide to participate? You were just so traumatized.
Well, a couple reasons. First, my first reaction, my personal reaction, was wanting to speak out. The first thing I did was write. I wrote something, and I asked the Pittsburgh newspaper to publish it, and they said no.
They said no?
They said no, but they later interviewed me. But the Jewish Chronicle of Pittsburgh published what I wrote. Different audience, but interesting. And then I kept going. People kept interviewing us. People interviewed us a lot. People from all over the world were coming into our faces. One reporter came to my house. He knocked on the door like 2 days later and wanted to know about Cecil Rosenthal, and brought me donuts, which I didn't accept. And I don't recognize these television people at my door. Whatever. People came from all over. Trish came, as it turns out, she came to my workplace, which is a different synagogue. And she was sent to me by our mutual friend and colleague. And I met her. She wanted to meet people, and we talked. And it turned out that her method of interviewing was different from everyone else. She asked real questions. She wanted to know the answers. And when you gave her answers, she didn't try to twist them around to be something else. She asked further questions about that line of thought. She was really interested. And it was cathartic. It was like writing a diary that you could say, there, that's my story. That's it.
The news media who were doing daily news, what did they want to know?
Oh, they asked everything. They wanted details, which we were not supposed to give. We did divulge eventually some details in the film, but we were not supposed to do the details that might come up in the trial, because we obviously all had different memories, and the different agencies are putting together what actually totally happened, and none of us still knows completely how everything unfolded, because none of us has the whole story. So that's what they wanted. They wanted, as Trish says, the true crime stuff, and we didn't have that. And I wasn't going to tell it anyway, even if we had been allowed. And they wanted a lot about Cecil and David.
Really?
It's fascinating. They wanted to glorify the Tree of Life as being inclusive. I have to say, we were never thinking of ourselves as inclusive in that regard, because they were members of the congregation. We didn't think of them as any different from the rest of us for any purpose like that. We have members who are blind, members who are hard of hearing, members, whatever.
Right.
They were another member, another two members, and they did what they did, and they enjoyed the services, and we included them, of course, but we weren't being inclusive, because that isn't us.
Susan, how did you help get this project off the ground quickly?
Well, I don't know that speed was our sort of first priority. And, so we really took our time, first of all, with the trauma-informed approach, and second of all, making sure that all of the participants were comfortable, as Trish said. And we had many different cuts and many different iterations. But we did want the film out because we felt that there was this rise in hate rhetoric, a rise in white supremacy and hate-related crimes, and around the world. So it was. We knew that we didn't want to delay. But we also wanted to find the right home for the film. So we were very deliberate and made sure that we, spoke to many different platforms and many different distributors before settling on the HBO, which, have been wonderful partners.
So let's get to the media landscape for true crime. And Brady, tell us how you helped people understand what this documentary was trying to do.
Yeah, I feel like we've gotten to it in so many ways. Like, that is appalling what I'm hearing about the Pittsburgh media. That is not good journalism. That is, you should have the disposition of like a first responder when you're talking to someone in that moment. And I think that's the problem with legacy media, is that they're more interested in clicks, they're more interested in the headline than treating the people that they're talking to humanely, and let alone telling a story. It really should be a diary entry in that moment.
So tell us about your article and how you framed the documentary that helped people understand what it was trying to do.
Well, first of all, I had to cover the documentary. There's no way I wasn't doing something with it. So you send an email, I went to HBO, and they're like, oh, I think we have Michael Keaton. You want to talk to Michael Keaton about it? I'm like, no, I want to talk to someone involved with the actual documentary. I want to know how this was done. And when you have the microphone of working for a place like Esquire, you have to give it to the right people. You need to amplify in the right moments and the right things. And everything you're saying about the way you interview is exactly how I see it. You need to listen, you need to be present. You can't skew, and it's all stuff that you would think would be obvious, but the stories I hear from people I interview is incredible. You would never believe it.
So, Trish or Brady, how does this film challenge the algorithm of hate?
That's a big one.
Do you want to? Well, it challenges hate because it really shows us as everyday people, and it dispels preconceived notions of others, and it shows the humanity and the empathy and the compassion and the grace, and it also shows how hate is so destructive and debilitating, and that it has no place in our way of life, and that we are all impacted by hate, as we saw Wasi Mohammed coming forward with raising funds to pay for the funerals, the Muslim community, and how Hannibal Lakumbe, he's a great-grandson of slaves, right? And for him to be subjected at the age of 5 years old, going to use a toilet in a bathroom, and to be told he could not, and to take that bathroom and make it a place of beauty, where he's creating exquisite and stunning music, it sends a very powerful message to haters, And I say, bring it on. I'm ready to talk to all these people with compassion and grace, but reaching across the aisle. I've been called names and all kinds of things for making this film. And I'm not afraid. I mean, I think that we have to, I think it challenges also politically. There's some sections of the film where, you know, we have to hold our leadership accountable. Who you vote for matters greatly, and there are consequences to who gets elected and who represents us. And so I think that for me, I would have liked to have gone deeper on that, but my focus was really about those that were directly impacted. But that is a lot of damage has been created in this country as a result of that leadership. And it is not something that's going to go away easily. And we're going to have to be very attentive to it moving forward, because we are seeing more and more of it. And we have to use this kind of a room. We're not only going to do this in New York, we are going across the country with the film to communities in need, to places where people are being harmed and struggling. And we're getting in those rooms with people, and we're trying to really you know, reach people. I mean, when I did my last film, I Am Evidence, I did the same thing. And I had police officers coming up to me saying, I was this guy, I didn't believe victims, I blamed them, they were this or they were that, and now this helped me learn. You know, and I think that's where it begins. And this is the power of the medium, and that's why it's so important. So you know, Susan, I tell Susan all the time, I believe in the power of possibility. When people tell me no, I say why. I say why? Why? Why is it no? We have to try. I mean, Pittsburghers, come on.
Yeah,
Isn't that what
gotta
we do?
come
Isn't that
together.
what we do?
Yep.
We do. We don't take no. You know, you have to be relentless in your commitment and your conviction, and we spend time with that which matters to us greatly, right? This matters to me greatly, right? I hadn't seen the film for about a month since the premiere, and I have to tell you, I was so moved. I've probably seen it 1,000 times now, and I really felt it, you know? And I think that is the power of the medium, that you feel this, and it helps you by sharing a lens into the lives of others. People start getting it. They start connecting, and they like with your article and the way you talk about your work as a journalist. I think that's really our responsibility to humanity. You know, how we choose to spend our time and who we choose to spend our time with is really pivotal.
So I have one more question, then we're going to open it up to the audience.
Yeah.
It's another hard question. I saved these for the end. Can empathy really change people's attitudes? So by seeing Audrey's story and her other members of her congregation, can that change? Can we stop hating because we understand them? Yes, go for it, Audrey.
So, yes, but I think it has to come first. I think we have to be friendly, as we were in Pittsburgh, among all of those groups. So you saw Wasi Muhammad was there. After 9/11, the Jewish community was at the Islamic Center protecting them in their services from people attacking. And we did that because we were already friends from before. We don't just come together when bad things happen. We're together all the time. A few months before the shooting, Wasi had been at the synagogue where I work, which is not Tree of Life, giving a Devar Torah on a Saturday, because we share, and the rabbis there had done similar, and we share with churches, and since we also have been sharing, Tree of Life congregation will be participating in the Christmas pageant at the Calvary Episcopal Church next Sunday, and then we're going to do a joint Hanukkah program because we're friendly, because we have connections, and we started that first. First, we were friends. So the community was already solidified. And then we could come together with empathy when things happen. And we shifted, bolstering people up, but we were already used to it.
Did you feel anti-Semitism strongly in your community before, and how do you feel about it now?
We knew it was around us, or in the suburbs, but not in the community. The city of Pittsburgh is much more cohesive and much more diverse. For instance, after the shooting, after we were debriefed, those who were in there were debriefed, we were ushered to the Jewish Community Center where the families were waiting to hear who had survived. And we went in, and we were still shaken, of course. One of the first people I saw was the founder of the Black Political Empowerment Project, former leader of the NAACP in Pittsburgh, who I have worked with on many initiatives over the decades. And when I saw him there, it clicked that somebody knew this was a hate crime. And that was all I needed, was to see this man there, and we hugged, and then that was a bit of peace, that people understood what had happened.
I see.
So that's us, that's Pittsburgh. I hope it's everybody else too.
I wanted to answer about your question about this working or not working, essentially, right? So when I set out to invite some notable Pittsburgh Sons to help with the filming, I went out to one other Pittsburgh Son, who I won't name, and spoke with his manager, who said, you really think you're going to make a difference? Why bother? Why bother doing this? No one's going to ever stop anti-Semitism. And I said, oh, okay, so not responding is the way to go, right? Like, so by not responding, do you think that's going to help? And so I moved on, as I always do when I get no. but I have looked, I knew this question was going to come at some point. And I looked at many, many empirical academic studies on this very thing. There are probably about 12 notable ones that I can share with you, some of which USC Shoah had funded and conducted. And the power of the testimonial bearing witness approach is the most powerful way to create empathy in the model of art. And so it's not just my opinion, it's the opinion of academics who have done conclusive data studies that have proven it. So the USC Shoah model, where you see Holocaust survivors, there's many different projects that have been done. It has been very powerful for people to learn about these issues. And so I do believe it works, and I've seen the science to prove it.
Yeah, I mean, neuroscientists talk about empathy and how it creates changes in the brain and releases oxytocin, which can lead to action. You want to act when you feel empathy. And so when people see films like A Tree of Life that are, first-person narrative of expressing personal trauma, they want to take action. They want to make sure that the word gets out, and they want to get involved, and they want to figure out how they can fight the forces that are causing the pain.
They can go forth and make peace.
Yes, beautifully said.
Questions? Yes. We have a microphone. Can you wait for it? Thanks.
Sure. First, thank you so much. I have HBO, and I didn't want to watch this at home alone, because this is the kind of film you need to see in a community of other people so that you can. I have a dog. I have a hard thing with the dog, but this is absolutely wonderful. And the questioning and the editing. I just want to add something to something you asked. Early education is so important. My father had a movie theater, but he was also the pinch-hitting rabbi in Lewistown, Pennsylvania, which is central, a very tiny town. And people thought Jews had horns there,
Yes.
it was that kind of thing. Every year he would go to all the different schools and the churches. The Catholic Church had their own school, and he would talk about the Jewish holidays to show face, to show this is who we are, this is what we do, what you do is similar to what we might do. It may all come to the same place when we die, who knows. But this was as important as showing Old Yeller and giving, you could come to the matinee with a can of soup if you didn't have the money. This is education, and maybe it's easier in communities where I know Pittsburgh has so many different pockets of communities, but this film speaks to that so beautifully. Thank you.
Much.
Yeah, I hope Trish will take this as a great compliment, which I intended to be. But one of the in my view, one of the wonders of a work of art is that it has meanings, or it can have meanings beyond what the artist himself or herself contemplates or thinks of. I didn't really respond to this so much as the theory that you espoused, that you articulated about empathy. As a Pittsburgh boy myself from Squirrel Hill, who's lived in New York many multiples of years more than I lived in Squirrel Hill. I grew up in Squirrel Hill, not far from Tree of Life. But when asked where I come from, I always say Pittsburgh. I don't say New York. I've been in New York, 55 years. But I say Pittsburgh. And what I felt about this film was you did a real mitzvah for Pittsburgh. I thought this shows Pittsburgh. First, you might say on one narrower level, it showed the Jewish community, at least the congregation and the community surrounding Tree of Life, which was not my synagogue, not my religious association. But they were shown in a very good light, as you probably expected and wanted and tried. But it was really the entire Pittsburgh community that responded to this, from the cops and first responders, who I felt to be terrifically moving. And, these are sturdy Pittsburgh men and women. I doubt that any of them were Jewish themselves.
Correct.
I read closely about this incident, and they put their hearts into it, as somebody in the film said. But the members of the congregation, including Audrey, and frankly, I'd never seen a woman before play the chauffeur, blow the chauffeur, and you were great. Really, that in itself what made the movie exceptional. But I thought of Pittsburgh as really, I've always thought of it this way, but this movie demonstrated it. There has never been the same tension and hostility and turmoil among races, or really even religion, despite this lunatic in this movie, in Pittsburgh, as there has been in many other cities. Yeah. Pittsburgh is a cohesive city. It's just big enough to be a real city and have a real institution, one of each sort, but not two, and I became very fond of Pittsburgh. And when you go around the country, as you say you're going to do,
We will.
I don't know if Pittsburgh is kind of, you're capable of universalizing it to other cities. I really think Pittsburgh is a special place. And a lot of special people have come from Pittsburgh and live in Pittsburgh. But to the extent you can, this movie does show to me, and the true art of it is, this was a whole community who came together. Yes, these victims, so-called victims, and the people who spoke, were exemplary. I was impressed and amazed with how articulate they were, the things they said. Some, even the guy who came to believe in the death penalty, you could see that he struggled with this. But I really feel the lesson of this film, the real art of this film, is that it turned Pittsburgh. Michael Mann supposedly does this in films like Los Angeles in the movie Heat.
I'll take Michael Mann. I've worked with him. That's a real compliment. Right
so
there.
all I want you to do is come away knowing that your work of art has many levels to it. And it's not just the one you thought or intended, as good as that was, as great as that was. It has others, I believe. And
Thank you.
I was
Thank
very
you.
happy.
Thank you so much. We have another question over here.
Okay, thank you. Mazel tov to everyone. This is so wonderful. I'm a Pittsburgher. Definitely, we all came out. As far as the cohesion, we all bleed black and gold, right? So, my close friend was part of New Light, Julie Harris, if you know Julie. Aside from that, it is really the beautiful aspect of Pittsburgh and the people coming together, and you really let them tell their story, and to tell it, to give it another platform. With the shofar, like really continuing to resound and show this spirit of resilience and care and love and community. So I wanted to voice that. It was really beautiful. And I do remember when Trump came through town that the protests were essentially silent, like they were just chanting Ozi Zimrat Yah the whole time. So, you captured so much of that. I guess my only question, it's more because I have, maybe just to hear you talk about the people who weren't interviewed, who chose not to be interviewed, who are still, I know, very much suffering. There's always reasons that people don't want to be in the limelight in these times, but how do you, what do you do with their stories, you know?
Well, that is part of the trauma-informed approach. Those that want to participate do, and those that don't, we don't pursue. I was checking on others throughout the filmmaking process, but I saw them, a few of them, participate in other media related. I saw a few of them on 60 Minutes, and I could see the condition they were in, and I didn't think it would be fair. And I made certain, I worked very closely with the 1027 Therapeutic Partnership led by Maggie Feinstein. You may know of her. I worked very closely with her to ensure that if anyone wanted to let me know. We repeatedly checked in. Is anyone feeling like, we don't want anyone to feel excluded, certainly. If you're interested, please let us know. Grief is a real journey for people, and I think it was just too painful for many of them to, but we felt that the representation with this, I interviewed all the survivors and some of the families that were comfortable, and that's how we wove the story together. But I was very respectful of their need for privacy and just to be in their journey. But I've met them all and talked with them over the years I was working on the film.
You can't force anybody, it's great that you gave them the opportunity, but like, how does that story get told? I mean, that's, you know what I mean?
That is the story.
I think this honoring their loved one in the dedication sections, and some of them are in the film, they're just not speaking. You see them, but it is really where we draw the line. They're not ready or they're not comfortable, and that's. I mean, I was on a panel once for a film festival, and it was I was talking about this trauma-informed approach, and there was a filmmaker who said, well, my subject was raped, and now she's having second thoughts in one set of the film, and how do I force her to stay in the film? And I said, it's a really hard call. You can't force her. You have to let her go now. She's not comfortable. It's a trade-off. I mean, we can't only take, right? It's like, for me, I don't only want to take. I also want to give something back. And I don't think that is conventional. I mean, people want to go get the story. There's always a pressure to get the story. But how do we get the story, and what does the story become? And part of what I owe so much gratitude to Brady, because his article was pivotal in sending the message to other journalists that we have to do better in how we document these types of stories. There is a perversion around true crime. I mean, some of it can be interesting learning about, I recently watched the Lorena Bobbitt docuseries because I was like, what is this all, but she was really abused, and they had both sides, and I said, okay, wanted to see, but in general, I think there is a perversion, and it frightens me. It's like the Dahmer Netflix series that's out. The families were really upset, and I tried to watch a little bit of it, and I physically couldn't get through it because it was just so heinous and debilitating. So I appreciate your question, and I think maybe in their own ways, when they're ready, they'll find the way to tell the story if they want to, but they carry their memories, right? May their memory be for a blessing. They carry their memories, and through the word, through our loved ones, through our relationships, their memory will live on forever through all of us, right? But for the purposes of art, maybe there'll be a book, or maybe there'll be some other vehicle for them down the road when they're ready.
They're their stories to tell.
Yeah.
So thank you. I don't want to totally stop this conversation, but we've come to the end of the time, and I want to thank this fantastic panel for sharing their ideas.